Welcome to Calm Under Fire, where we explore how real leaders deliver when the stakes are high. I'm Colonel John Boggs, U.S. Marine Corps retired. I'm a leadership advisor to senior executives, generals, CEOs, and people who want to be CEOs. In every episode, we'll uncover how extraordinary leaders stay calm, take action, and win without chaos. So let's get into it. Today's guest is someone who bridges what's been and what's coming in the world of work. Kristie Dierig is the founder and CEO of Everspark, a consulting firm that helps companies not only adapt to digital transformation, but lead it with intentional design, human-centered strategy, and AI-enabled execution. Before launching Everspark, Kristie spent 21 years at Procter & Gamble, where she worked at the intersection of IT and global HR. She led large-scale HR system implementations, global talent development initiatives, organizational design, and analytics efforts, grounding her in both technical rigor and the realities of people, processes, and performance. Since going independent, Kristie has taken that rare combination of engineering, IT, HR, and deep business acumen to help companies of all sizes reimagine how work gets done, build scalable HR operations, embrace AI responsibly, and design workplaces where people can thrive even as business evolves. Kristie, welcome to the show, and I'm really glad to have you here today.
Hi, John. Great to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. My pleasure.
Great. Now, before we get started, I think you have something that's going on that's changing how you're working here right now. You're going back into the workforce?
Yes, I am. At the time of this podcast, it's a brilliant opportunity to connect with you, and even in our conversations, it was something that landed in my lap. I wasn't exactly looking for it, but it feels like the right time, and it absolutely was part of my roadmap. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity to move into a new opportunity under a Fortune 1000 company. I am, as of December, taking on a position as Director of Workforce Strategy and Organizational Effectiveness at Paychex, an HR
Wow.
tech company.
Wow.
So, given my background and some things I've learned that hopefully we'll uncover here today, it's a very natural transition for me and an opportunity for me to continue in my career applying the things that I've learned and making a greater impact.
Great. Great. That is wonderful. And congratulations with that. And I
Thank you.
wish you much luck with that. But if you don't mind, I'm going to jump right into it. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Let's do
Perfect.
it.
Perfect. Okay, Kristie, now you made a significant shift after 2 decades of a Fortune 50 firm, and you had your own consultancy with Everspark, and of course, now you're going back. But what was the moment or series of realizations that convinced you that the world needed a firm like Everspark?
Mm. That's a great question, and it's a little bit, I'll say, esoteric and rooted in my experiences. So from the beginning, I've always been a left brain, right brain balanced person.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because I loved math and science in high school, and I played an instrument, and I was athletic. And so a lot of people, have a variety of interests and so on. But that level of activities led me into an engineering degree at University of Michigan. But I was still in well, it's not nuclear or chemical, it's industrial engineering, which was the default because I just wanted to do process and I was intrigued by systems. Um, and that led me into a career in IT at Procter and Gamble. And even then, it was like, do you want to do the manufacturing job
Mm-hmm.
of industrial engineering, or do you want to do the IT job of industrial engineering? And I say all this is that sometimes I think people have careers where it's like, I know what I want and I'm going to go after it. And other people might have careers that say, it's a lesser of two evils, or I don't know, but there's something of interest here, and you're given an opportunity in
Mm-hmm.
doing that. And so, looking back, it very much had a lot of logic and makes a ton of sense to me and where I am today and the experiences I've had. But going through it, and I share this because maybe others feel encouraged in this, You may just need to know what's the right next step. That you don't have the full line of sight to what's going to happen in the next 15 years, but you know it's the right next step for you. And so I feel very fortunate in having the opportunity to have those steps available to me and to have an organization and a company and work alongside amazing people who believed in me and supported me in going through that. So after the IT side, then moved into the HR side, again, applying my technical knowledge, my analytic knowledge. I was an analyst for Pampers for 3 years, so I learned about commercial retail and all the data and science behind that. And so through this journey, I found that when I was servicing the HR employees at Procter and Gamble, I was the global head of our HR talent career system. So we had 1,500 people who operate in 56 countries.
Wow.
And their onboarding into the function, into our skills and career paths were designed under my leadership as reported up to an SVP. And what I learned is some of the biggest skill opportunities were strategic thinking, influencing up. So you'd have somebody who was maybe 5 years out of college, and they're the HR leader for somebody who's been 20 years leading a business unit in Procter and Gamble. That's really intimidating. And so what are the right skills we need for HR business partners influencing up and being strategic? And how do we increase their technology, their comfort with technology, and their ability to bring analytic insights to life? Those were the biggest skill opportunity gaps we had. And with my background in IT and HR and systems thinking, it was something that was like the air I breathed. It was something I loved, I did naturally, and I found that my HR colleagues didn't necessarily have that same set of experiences. And so through that journey and a tug in my heart to say, is it P&G that I want to be at until I'm 65 years old, that is a worthy career. I know it's an amazing company to work for, hard to get into. They have a real stringent evaluation process. But I had this feeling that, gosh, but there's other businesses, there's other people, there's other companies, there's other industries that I would love to work with and learn more about. And so it wasn't in a day, John, that I decided. It was an 8-year stint where I said,
Wow.
there's something in my future that will be, my first date with my husband, that was the conversation. So there was no surprise when I put in my resignation in 2021 saying, now I think is the time. Now feels like the right time to move into a new direction, and leverage the opportunities that I had. So with the insights of skill opportunities, with the insights of where the industry was headed, more technology. I mean, this was it was 1 year after the pandemic, so we were still kind of wearing masks in 2021 as I left. But recognizing there was so much that mid-market companies may not have the capacity or skills among their workforce to bring this transformation to life, that I wanted to partner with them and bring some of that capacity and innovate and grow in my own way. And mind you, this was all like AI. ChatGPT launched in 2022, so it was in the middle of my my entrepreneur journey. And even then, I didn't quite roll up my sleeves and dive in. I was, kind of listening and learning and observing. 2025 very much, took off, and I'm sure many other can relate to the popularity of it and the impact of it. And so I've been building my skills and knowledge in that space in order to serve my clients too. So it's been an exciting 4 years of all the things that have happened as HR priorities have shifted, as technology just continues to grow in the importance, the transformation that's needed, and the impact of AI. So hindsight, if I could tell you, I perfectly orchestrated everything, maybe very few of us can ever really say that about our own careers. But I feel very fortunate and excited for the journeys that I have had and the experiences that I have been given, and using that as ways to continue to grow and help others in the process.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome. And now I'm going to ask you to lean on some of that experience, because my next question is, what's the biggest misperceptions that people have or had about HR, technology, and AI? How do you bring all of that together? What's the biggest misperceptions they have?
That's a really poignant question, and something that I would say articles and thought leaders and so on have been really wrestling with for many years now. In the HR world, it's the seat at the table phrase, right? It's the kind of, are you doing the things in order to be the first person that your CEO goes to when they have a problem related to people, right? Or those kinds of things. And what I've learned along the way is we've cracked the nut in some way. And yet, has every HR leader across all companies really risen to the occasion to be that strategic, digital, data-driven leader with all the bells and whistles to really understand your workforce? We're not there
Mm-hmm.
yet. And I really think if I look at the IT function or the marketing function inside companies or even finance, I mean, in P&G, I was given a front row seat to observe how continuous innovation and transformation occurs on a large scale. P&G does that really, really well. And so I saw the IT function go through it, where they outsourced tens of thousands of people to HP back in 2004. And I was there when the digital transformation of marketing happened, and how we created new digital marketing managers, right
Mm-hmm.
alongside the brand managers inside the business units and inside those brands.
Mm-hmm.
And I just can't help but parallel those transformations with HR. We're just the same kind of thing is happening. It's just happening a little later and happening when it should, is when, what does the business need and how is it driving a higher level of performance among HR professionals? I think we're smack dab in the middle of that. So when you say misconception or misperception of that, is I think it's just related to, we've been operating under a paradigm and a mindset of what HR has traditionally been. Things like hire fire, of course, you have to do that. Things like compliance and making sure everybody gets the right training. Yes, every company needs that. It's an important role of HR. The way I think about it, again, mirroring from the other functions that I've observed in the last 20 years, I just think there's always the continuing to elevate the value of what service is being offered, and right sizing or outsourcing those other services. So, for example, in the IT world, you always have base operations keep the lights on. You have people, roles are designed in that way. They are rewarded for, stability and 0% downtime, those kinds of things. Those are equivalent to compliance and maybe hire fire operations in my mind, the way I think
Mm-hmm.
about them.
Mm-hmm.
But what else is IT doing? They're doing cybersecurity. They're doing proactive planning. They're doing risk management, risk assessment. They're driving analytics and how do you monitor the uptime of all of your systems, all 20, 40 of them, however big you are as a corporation. And the need to have a CIO as an official position, depending on how big your company is, or working with fractional CIOs, I think has just grown in demand because companies are really concerned about cybersecurity risk. It can be
Mm-hmm.
tens of millions of dollars impact to their overall business, right? There's a real business need for that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the pandemic might have put a little pressure in the HR system, right? I
Okay.
mean,
All right.
that's an understatement.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, I think that pressure cooker has just only continued to grow. And so I think we're at a head where, and I'll tell you, there's an article written in February this year, but business leaders are looking at the needs of the business and the capacity and output of their staff and their teams.
Mm-hmm.
And if HR is not cutting it, they're starting to fill those positions with non-HR people. There was a report from Josh Bersin and McKinsey back in February that said 10% of companies surveyed were filling their CHRO position with a non-HR person. And in some cases, removing that position entirely or moving it to report under finance or legal, when it was maybe a head position. Now, I don't know all the percentage of dimensions that's readily a core practice right now.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, the tea leaves in that say, I'm looking for HR to be a business leader, just like the rest of my C-suite. And if they're not able to, have the right analytics and the right data and the right contribution to the meeting on the spot that tells me what are the financial impact of not doing that thing, of, not only looking at the increase of cost of healthcare and engagement, like those are some things that are very much closely tied to the business costs and so on. But there are numbers you can find when it comes to attrition, to burnout, to engagement, to productivity, to cost savings and process improvement. There are numbers there, but I don't know that there's a tool or a skill set commonly found among HR that makes that part of how they operate and how they show up. So I've explored that. I've sat with 18 different HR leaders in the last 2 years of smaller companies, 4 to 500 employees, where it's a topic that we talk about to say, what does that look like and how do you lead with analytics today? And there's a variety of things that they are doing. But to say that every person is operating at 100% fully rooted in that, that's not true at the moment. And again, this is a smaller, business size. So if you're a larger company, maybe that is core to what you do. But back to your question, John, I just think that it's a growing need and an imperative for HR leaders to leverage tools to drive more business focused metrics and language as they show up representing their function. And as the pressure cooker continues to increase, as the analogy would be, I think the drive is, as an HR leader, how are you thinking about disrupting your own way of operating? How are you, just like outsourcing IT to HP that P&G did in 2004? What are you outsourcing? What are you right sourcing? How are you even redesigning your operating model? Is AI going to be a front service for point of contact for your managers? Not everybody needs to do that, but it's very much on the table right now. And so for your larger HR teams, are they considering that? Is that the right thing to do in terms of maximizing the time and skills of their in-house HR team to really work on those bigger business opportunities? So I tend to see HR leaders take on more. Oh, I got to do now I got to do analytics. Now I got to do product management. Now I got to go and survey beyond an annual survey. I got to go listen to my employees. Now I got to go coach my leader. Now, like, you keep adding on more and more and more. And no wonder HR is burnt out. I've attended a lot of sessions. I hear a lot of studies and so on that one of the top most burnt out positions in the company is HR. No wonder. But I see that as an opportunity for innovation and transformation to right source how they show up and how they leverage their W-2 staff in-house. And how do you do that in the spirit of workforce transformation? It's happening with or without HR. Your CEOs are going to IT. They're saying, hey, we need to go and bring this AI tool to the sales team and, cut 20% of their total work time today. Absolutely. Every company is needing to grow in that way. And yet when you say cut 20%, there are 7 different levels of HR that are now impacted based on that decision. There's a comp impact, there's a job description impact, there's a upskilling impact, there's a role design impact, there's a process impact, there's a communication, there's a change, there's employee engagement, there's fear, there's excitement. And so HR is right there in the center of all that. And so either they can show up and say, hey, IT, before you do that, or hey, as a team, let's collaborate on all of the decisions we're making on where and when we're going to implement AI. And let's proactively put together a project initiative to make sure we're fully engaged in that. And that let's proactively make sure that this lands well and it's the right investment. We measure the ROI on it, and it's a collaborative effort. So there's many different ways that HR can show up in the spirit of workforce change with or without AI. And I just think it's more imperative now than ever that they are showing up in those ways, upskilling if needed, or just asking the right questions and asking to be in the meetings where the decisions are happening, because the work of HR at the core is very much needed right now.
Well, this is very interesting. You pointed out all the ways that AI can be used. Is there a framework? Is there a framework for bringing AI in? Is there a right way, a wrong way for, hey, this is getting you're too far over your skis on this one. You need to back up.
Yeah.
Is there a framework for bringing AI into HR?
AI into HR or AI into a company, I think the framework is the same. So I'll kind of speak at a broader level. Based on what I've read or heard in Mercer and Gartner webinars, and what I've read in a very prominent company called AIHR.com, which is funny, it's not artificial intelligence. It's the Academy of Innovation for HR. So they existed maybe before ChatGPT was created, but it's funny, the irony of the acronym. They have a framework that they've published. Hacking HR is another social media worthy, very strong thought partner, thought leader in AI implementations in business. So, and that's just in the HR world. I'm sure, right? Other IT companies and tech companies or so on are doing that. So there are some models out there, but there's not one model that I've necessarily found that kind of, is universally applied or so on. But as I look across all of those, I've built my own framework leveraging the insights that have been shared across those. So if I may, I'd love to share. And I think it really speaks to the unique role that HR can bring when companies are thinking about implementing AI. And so let me kind of maybe put some estimates of what your listeners might be experiencing right now in terms of implementing AI, based on a smattering of conversations I've had, conferences I've been to, and webinars that I've attended or articles I've read this year. So some companies might be saying, okay, CIO, what is our IT initiative? What is our AI strategy that we're going to, what are we going to do? We're waiting for you. It's an IT, it's a tech thing. We're waiting for you to put something together. And so they do. Or in some cases, maybe they don't. They don't know where to start, or there's other priorities, whatever that is. So I've heard some companies might be doing that. Others might be saying we need a policy. And so, for the last 2-3 years, that's been the first thing that companies have done. So if you haven't built a document that explains to your workforce what AI is or is not for your employees and how you're leveraging it for your business, please do that. That's one of the most important things you can do. And so if you've done that already, great. And hopefully it covers all of the elements of what is AI ethically, what does it mean to your company? What are the do's and don'ts around AI? What happens if there's a breach? If your business metrics get uploaded in ChatGPT, who do you go to? Should you report it? What do you do about it? And there's all kinds of things that your policy should address. It really provides clarity and a platform for understanding where people stand and where your company stands on that. Other companies have gone as far as removing, through their firewall, removing access to certain things. No, we don't use ChatGPT for these reasons. I know of one tech company who removed the ability to use ChatGPT at all because it was the right thing to do for their business from a tech standpoint. So just because you're a tech company doesn't mean you're going to use all those tools. But being able to not only write the policy, but maybe put some controls in place that really prevent people from doing the thing that you really don't want them to do. And, so it's a gentle reminder, oh, that's right, I can't go use that. I've heard many companies doing that. That's great. And those for me in my framework are just maybe 3 elements of a broader, maybe 10-point framework of how do you create an official project plan around AI for your company. How do you set up all the elements of a project charter, which includes ownership, responsibility, governance, decision-making, committee meeting frequency, measures of objectives, timeline, how do you measure success? All the things you would do in a normal project, AI for your company requires this amount of framework and structure. Reason being is the effort and impact is not just a ERP software implementation project like we were familiar with in the past. I think, we're all familiar with, I'm going to buy the software, we're going to implement it, everybody uses it, I pay a license fee, voila, I'm done, and IT owns the operations and contract. What's different in AI, it's democratized and it's micro implementations. And each use case, so part of your governance and setup is defining what's the process in which we're going to identify use cases, evaluate use cases, measure the ROI in use cases, then go follow through and then come back and say, did we achieve what we wanted to achieve? It's a micro implementation, and it's a broader project, but it has micro implementations. And each one of those could be a different software provider. It could be your own in-house build of a GPT or agent of some sort. You're going to have your own pilots. You're going to do different divisions of your company who are going to be the only ones using that tool at that time, et cetera. From making sales calls more operationally efficient to maybe improving how paper forms are used with an agent that can read handwriting a little better. Whatever that use case is for you that will drive your business forward, that now becomes the place where you're going to focus and invest. So because if you dive into AI without governance or so on, it can feel very broad and big and cumbersome quickly because of this identity of democratized use cases and investments. And it is just, I think, just really imperative and cleaner and more efficient if a company is able to collaborate across silos, across departments, and really get organized and clear about what that looks like. It's just going to be more efficient along the way. That's what I would recommend from a textbook, right, starting point, and having HR lead that. And quickly, I'll talk on the other two pillars of the framework that you asked about, John. The second one is what I talked to already, which is how does it impact your workforce? How does it impact how you define jobs, how you comp jobs, how you reward people for their contributions, how you create goals, how you measure performance? If you're disrupting 20, 30% of their day-to-day work, everything is disrupted. You're playing at a new level. And so you have to recalibrate everything from training to job descriptions and how you recruit for those positions, et cetera. So that fundamentally impacts all the pieces of what HR typically does in service to the business. So that's pillar number 2. And then pillar number 3 is how you bring AI into the company, is how are you also building that inside HR? I've heard many companies, I've worked with large companies here in Cincinnati, where I live and work, and others, and they're saying, well, yeah, if I go and tell my workforce to go do something using AI to be more innovative and more productive, but the way that they experience the company via HR programs and tools is still back in 1995. You don't have congruency and integrity in what you're asking them to do if their experience with the company is still rooted in historic technologies. So many companies I've talked to said, well, the first place to begin is HR. How do we improve with AI the onboarding experience? How do we improve the manager-employee relationship through AI or better tools? Or how do we create a more human experience and automate the stuff that isn't necessary for us to use our time and talents with? And so whether or not it's in that order or all at the same time, it's a tall workload if you're saying, okay, HR, do all the things you're doing. And oh, by the way, set up a good project and a governing body to make decisions. Evaluate how AI is going to impact all the things you do for your business. And oh, by the way, go and transform and disrupt yourself. That's a tall order.
Wow.
And so it's a lot, but from a framework standpoint, that's really how I see it. And I think each HR leader is going to have it happen to them, or they're going to find themselves quickly needing to step forward and be in front of those things, because there's stuff that's going to happen you're going to have to naturally do, but there's a lot that's at risk. It's a very unique time right now. There's a lot of things that are at risk. People's lives, people's trust in the company, their faith and fear with AI, what it's going to do, what it's not going to do. There's a lot of noise out there right now. And so companies who are able to lead clearly, decisively, and even if in small incremental ways, it's going to be better for everybody involved.
What's the risk? There's a lot that gets done, but what's the greatest risk? I mean, when you're bringing AI in, and you talked about governance, you talked about having things in place, what's the greatest risk for when you're bringing it in? What is it?
I think there are 2 main risks that come to mind for me, and I'll mention them real quick, and then we'll dive into them real quick. Number 1 is, I've heard this analogy before. Some leaders and board of directors might be tempted to look at AI as the equivalent of a GLP-1 drug for weight loss.
Oh my God.
Right?
What an analogy.
That hits you, right? But I mean, where we are experiencing quick solutions for those problems that our bodies were designed to lose weight quickly, lose weight slowly. Like, you don't get fat when you eat a slice of cheesecake the next day. You don't gain 5 pounds. Our body move slowly, gaining weight and losing weight. And
Mhm.
so suddenly we have this drug that's really exciting and it's amazing and people's lives are changed and that's so good. If we take that idea and think that AI will come and give me a 10% increase in my profits in the next 12 months because I can
Mhm.
implement it, I just want my team to go do it. It's tempting. But if you're not careful of the actual impact to your customer service, to your employees, to your ability to retain your employees and keep them employed. And if everybody starts taking it, my risk, and I've been with leaders here in Cincinnati and others that, are we, if we have 5% unemployment right now, are we heading into a 20, 30, 40? I've even heard the number 60% unemployment in the next 5 years if everybody goes to that. I think that's a huge risk. So from a social and economic point of view, I don't want everybody to start using the GLP drug idea of a GLP-1 drug for your workforce and for your profits. Right. So I think that's and John, honestly, and I am not one to proliferate or speak about politics or so on, but if there is value of government and incentives for corporations to not do that because everybody's gonna be better off, like that's one thing I'm like, whoa, that would be a great thing to go lobby for. But that is not my that is not my ball of wax. That's one. The second one is just the investment without the measured return. So, I think that the most quoted article I've heard of 2025 is the MIT report about 95% of, maybe you can even say it with me, right? 95% of AI projects fail. That's been the report that came up
My,
this year, and I've heard it quoted many, many, many times.
wow, let me write
Um,
that one down.
yeah, there you go.
95%.
So
Wow.
95%. Um, and that if anybody's implementing Copilot, which is pretty expensive, price per user on a monthly basis, or like bringing enterprise ChatGPT or so on, and not having a real use case and not measuring your baseline before you start using it and measuring the value after and the actual impact and kind of evolving that impact measurement through business
Mhm.
terms and so on. If you're not doing that and just investing, you're just at risk of missing the opportunity to really understand the value to say, yeah, we should continue paying for that tool in this way for our workforce because it's delivered X value to us and we see it here in the bottom line or a P&L report. There are companies who are, I've heard that are just kind of turning things on and that's good. That's good. But you're going to get to a point where down the road, if you weren't measuring it or understanding really how people are using it and the actual impact of business, you're just going to find yourself in a spot where you're like, I don't know if we should continue to invest. I don't know where else we need to go. I don't know what else has, how can we tell stories about the success? And without those stories of success, you have employees who are missing the nuggets, the sound
Mhm.
bites of what's happening with AI inside your company. They're missing that. So now they're left, if you don't have a good story message track of what's
Mhm.
happening in the change of AI to the way you operate, they're
Mhm.
going to be left to making their own stories. And those are going to be, fortuitous for the business, or they're going to be rooted in fear
Mhm.
with the unknown and so on. So I think having leaders be in control of the narrative of what AI is, it requires that use of frameworks and intentionality and collaboration to really understand the impact and in how it's going to move your business forward and not in a careless or dramatically impacting way.
Mhm.
I think the hardest thing from a leader standpoint is, I need to reduce 7,000 jobs or 500 jobs or whatever. Like those are things that happen all the time. I get it. But if everybody does it, like we're not incentivized to care about the impact to our society, right? Leaders are only incentivized to care about the performance of their own company,
That's
whether
correct.
privately held or publicly held. And so we don't have an alignment of incentives that really reward us in a way that I think is great for everybody.
Mhm.
Um, and so I don't know, it's an interesting time. So those are the two biggest risks that I see at a macro
Okay.
level.
Well, tell me now about how work gets done. What does the future what does the future ready workforce look like?
Mm,
We- Beyond 2025, what do they look like?
yeah, yeah. Um, it's something that I've researched quite a bit. And as I work with companies, big and small, as I explore what's the futuristic vision of what's possible to what's happening today. Um, I mean, the gap is quite large. There's no risk of having a manager that's an AI agent. Like, that's not happening anytime soon, right? It doesn't mean that we're all going to start using VR things. If we really think about, what are the images we think about when we talk about future of work, there's kind of very dramatic kinds of maybe imagery that comes. I found it to be more human. And I actually enjoy when I talk to, when I listen to speakers and attend webinars and so on, that it really is, how do we make more of our workforce really rooted in those human characteristics and human skills,
Mm-hmm.
and maximizing those moments and what's discussed in those moments, and letting everything else be automated or served by AI. I think this tool comes at a time where we know we need more productivity. We know we're burnt out. We know we're working 60, 70 hours a week or working 2 jobs. Like, too many people are doing that, based on my own personal experience and what I hear from others and see in other companies. And it's only growing bigger, right? When you look at the GDP, and I hear, thought leaders like Josh Bersin, the next 10 years, it's only going to get worse. Like, we're just continuing to talk about pressure cookers. It's going to continue to grow, and that pressure point is going to go up. And so I think AI came at a perfect time to help us like have that magic wand that we use in ways that actually bring us out of the red and back into the black, and say, yes, I can do this 40-hour-a-week job and I can do it well. And that so many people are burnt out. So I think there's that element that's coming into play that we'll continue to look at. But I heard from Salesforce a few years ago where they said, when I redesign workplace experiences, like how somebody onboards to a company, or how they have regular conversations with their manager, or how they build a strategy, they say, what are the things that are the most important human element of this experience?
Mm-hmm.
And then everything else, I figure out, how do I automate? And that was really refreshing to me, is designing it in that way. In addition to, what are the most efficient steps that we can take in this? What are the ways that my tools can come and support me? But when you think about the human first, and really think about what is the desired experience that makes a person smile, or delights them with a surprise that's really personalized, or helps them in a time of need in ways that our companies never showed up before. Those are the things that I think really stand out. So you're hearing more about pet insurance or bereavement plans that include the death of a pet. Those are just a couple examples of things that I think are really innovating in the way that we think about how we care for our humans in our company at work, that are beyond cookie cutter and what we've seen in the last 20, 30 years. So I think the future of work is more human. I think the other piece of it is definitely more tech, right? It is going to be fully integrated. I haven't yet tried on the Google glasses where you can kind of have augmented reality and so on. But I think it's going to continue to grow in popularity and so on. And so, like, from a retail standpoint, my former employer, being able to take goggles and go down into a retail store and look at the shelf points and suddenly have this information that, as a shopper, tells me, what are the reviews on this product? What are the ingredients on this product? Is there anything that's toxic in here? What was the price point last week? Or is there any other company, retailer in my city that has this product at a lower price?
Mm-hmm.
From a consumer product, grocery store, point of view, that's amazing. And so I think, as we think about the consumer point of view, as technology integrates into their daily lives, the world of work has to keep up. I've heard many people say, like, so I have my phone, Amazon knows me, Netflix knows me, and so on, but I go to work and I get the email on Friday that I have to complete my enrollment for my healthcare, and I completed it 2 weeks ago, but I still get those blanket emails that tell me I haven't done it yet, which is just really confusing, and I don't feel seen and heard in that experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's a small example of many different touch points that employees have with their employer that doesn't feel like the technology they experience in the rest of their life.
Wow.
So I would love to see more companies leveraging the technologies that are in our day-to-day lives and have that be a core part of how they operate inside their company. The last thing that I'll just say, so how do we think about the technology is going to be more human? Sorry, the future of work is to be more human It's going to be more tech, but in a smarter, more supportive way. And the
Mhm.
last one is, and this is a really big swing here, but I really think it's about accountability to the company to create the conditions that let people bring them full selves to work. Now, there's a paradigm shift here that I've been researching, and I haven't extensively talked about, but it's something that I want to continue to talk about. And it first came up from a woman that spoke at a conference 4 years ago. So Des Woods is her name. I'm going to give her full credit for this. But she had this exercise that um, had an envelope of 20 different pieces of paper. And she's like, okay, great. Take out 3 of them. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, if you were the employee and your company gave you these things, let's call it a salary, a computer, and a bonus structure, whatever that is. So how much of your best effort would you give that company if they had these 3 things for you? And you're like, okay, 60%, like whatever the number is, right? So she goes on and she says, now pull out all 20 of them. And so you do this in gradients, right? You grow from 60% to 80%. But she's like, what if your company gave you all 20 of these? And all 20 of those things are the things you would imagine you've heard of, right? It gives you tuition reimbursement. It gives you flexible work arrangements. They have pet insurance or bereavement, whatever the things are that says like, gosh, if my employer did all 20 of those things, I would give them 110%. I would go above and beyond. And I was like, oh, mind blown. I said, everything that we do today is performance based. We say, John, thank you so much. We set these goals in January. You did these things. We adjusted as we went. You did the training and so on. But let me tell you, I'm going to rate you on how well you actually did the thing this year, and I'm going to pay you accordingly. And it's kind of like, what have you done for me lately? Right? Every year on year, we do that. And there have been articles that I've read that say that system's broken, and I really believe it. And there's some credibility to it too, right? You can't throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Mhm.
But I think from a strict paradigm point of view, it's really limiting, and it creates that culture of fear. And it doesn't reward innovation. It doesn't reward risk taking. It doesn't reward those big bets to grow the business and acquire that company or start this product or expand this market. It really it's a fear mindset, the conditions that it creates. And so what if companies were accountable, managers, leaders were accountable and actually measured on the ability to deliver a great workplace that allows their employees to give their best work?
Mhm.
Now, I'm sure every CEO is saying, yeah, Kristie, right, but that costs an arm and a leg. What are you talking about? Right? There's always a cost to it, more or less. But I really think the heart and the intent really can make a difference. And there are cost effective ways to really think differently about how you create those conditions to invite your workers to give their best. Things like it doesn't cost much to have a suggestion box, virtual or physical, where you invite your employees to tell you what's on their minds and what's lacking. It doesn't cost much to create an environment where you're empowering your teams to problem solve the things that are happening on a day-to-day basis and not waiting for somebody else to create a program and a strategy and a budget to go and solve that problem for you. You can empower them to solve their problems right there. And in fact, that's really the thing that really makes businesses more productive and more effective and stronger in the market, when you are empowering the individuals to get the things resolved in a way that they know is impacting their work and not waiting for somebody else. So those are a couple examples of ways that leaders and companies can think about, how do I in a cost effective way with a strategic mindset, what am I accountable and responsible for doing and setting up the conditions in my workplace that allow my employees to bring their best self to work, and balancing that with a performance management system uh,
Mhm.
that's designed to get the behaviors that you're looking to get and that doesn't impede those behaviors.
Wow, that's excellent. Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. Um, Tell me this, when work changes fast, and since COVID, everything's been changing pretty doggone quick. When work changes fast, AI, remote and hybrid work, new systems coming in, employees often feel disoriented, or what's happening next. So, hey, we're coming to work 3 days a week. I come on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Or um, how do you help companies design change in a way that safeguards people's dignity, their engagement, and long-term morale?
Yeah.
How do you help them do that?
That's a great question, John. And I know it's on the hearts and minds of many leaders today, especially the HR leaders that I'm with on a monthly basis. I have a couple thoughts on what that looks like. And it's been used, there's principles and methodologies that have been used in other parts of business like IT. So there's three. There's one is freedom and a framework. I'll talk about that. There's a way to think about how do you define goals and how do you empower teams to get work done. So freedom and a framework is one. The second one is agile, leveraging the agile mindset and methodology wherever you are in business. And so that's a second. The third is democratized communication. So let's unpack each one of those. So the first one is freedom in a framework. And I first experienced this from a organization called the KAOS pilot out of Denmark. Back in 2012, I was in New York City for this 3-day experience, and I didn't understand the power of it, but I think it's even more relevant today than ever before. It just says, here is the framework of the team, of our department, of our company, whatever that is. This is our goals we're going to set this year. Here's the direction we're headed. It's the definition of that strategy. And maybe you have some guardrails that say we're going to do it for these markets, for these customers, for this percentage of our portfolio, whatever that is. And when you set that up and you say we're going to grow, 3% each quarter, whatever those things are, so everybody understands the way that you're marching. So you're understanding the what. How you get there, as long as it's within those guardrails, you're empowering those individuals who know the work best to go and figure out how to do that. And by doing that, it allows them to be innovative. It gives them freedom. It gives them ability to be creative. It gives them the ability to leverage what they do well, and to create work and feel ownership for it, which is always those things that people are looking for with their employer, right? Nobody likes a micromanager. No, we need SOPs to a point, but I don't know. Does everybody love following SOPs? It's not the greatest thing to do. Standard operating procedures, right? So I think there's value in just the human spirit and being able to have freedom in a framework and understand what those parameters are and what goals are, et cetera. The second one is agile. So have you heard of agile before, John?
Yes.
Okay, so in the IT world, it was from waterfall agile. In the last 20 years, they learned that your software development needed to follow a new methodology. Why? Because change was happening in the middle of product development. You get the requirements in January. By the time you deliver it in December, the market's changed, and change is even more abundant in IT just as much as business. So using agile, there's an organization based out of London called Agile HR. Many other industries and fields of study have been using it, and it just totally makes sense. So being able to say, we have a sprint. This is the direction that we're headed. We're going to start with this piece of the project, and we're going to do a 2-week sprint. We're going to focus on this. We're going to get feedback. We're going to test and learn. And after 2 weeks, we're going to pivot and we're going to move on. And, whatever the time frame is, in a 4 to 6 week time frame, we're going to have this and we're going to launch this. Or we're going to pilot it in this. We're going to report back on what we learned, et cetera. Any company who's trying to do any kind of change, AI, organization processes, leveraging tools, not AI, but other tools or so on, I think an agile approach really makes sense. And that coupled with design thinking, so where you're looking to speak to the end users first. And the key principle of design thinking is to fail fast and fail early and as fast as possible. So get those bad ideas out of the way as fast as possible. And you can do that by listening to your end users and kind of sitting in a group. And even in 2 hours, you can really make a lot of progress just using some, powerful techniques. So I think those two go together when in terms of what is it we need to do now? Who's the best person to speak on that? And how do we make incremental progress and pivot as we go? So we have a tight feedback loop to make sure we're on the right path. I think that's a key business operating tool that's critical in the space of change, because no organization is ever going to be able to change everything all at once, nor should they. There's a cost to that. So being able to understand where do you need to change and how do you do it in a meaningful way. And then the third one is communication. So I've been with organizations, pockets of Fortune 50 companies that I was invited back to work with, where, there's still emails and distribution lists and websites and so on that are used to disseminate information, and town halls and so on. You still need those. But I also find that there's lacking speed of information sharing when you're still doing emails and distribution lists. Because typically what happens is we forgot about Susie Smith. Oh, that person that just hired in last Monday, we forgot to put them in the distribution list. We forgot to let eight people know that their distribution list they have on their computer needed to include that new person, like all the things, right? So email's never been the most productive tool, and yet is the one that is most readily used in business. So I think it's a blend of how do you use email as the tool for the right communication point at the right time, and how do you leverage other tools and systems. So when I was working on a large HCM implementation at my former employer, we had an amazing Teams site that was built with robust folder structure that was fully universally leveraged. We had a bunch of team subsites where we knew who we were, and we knew exactly when we would use the chat feature on there, when we would not. We would keep our notes, like we were very organized, just leveraging some Microsoft Teams tools in this regard that allowed us to be extremely clear about when I would, when I'd get an update or the latest and greatest was documented, you would find it here. And so in some ways it's going to the source of the document. What is the master document? How do you make sure that it's accessible to everybody? And how do you be rigorous in the way you keep that information? And how do you then point people to that and only repeat information and email others in ways that are relevant and necessary? So I'm giving a very tactical example, but to say, I think every company gets tangled up in these scenarios. I'm using Google, I'm using Slack. My husband works for a nonprofit, and he's at any point in time, he's got 50 to 100 different Slack messages going at the same time. And his job requires him to read everyone, to follow every conversation, to comment all the things. That's today's world of work. It's not unique to him. I'm sure many others experience that. And so how do we design in a way that's useful and beneficial to all? How do we leverage AI? Like, does he have an AI bot that can go in and say, Jay, here, my husband's name is Jay. How do I quickly tell you all the latest things that happen across these 100 Slack messages, And so I think there's an opportunity for us to use technology to be more effective and efficient in the way we communicate and share information. But there are some strategies of ways you really have to collaborate on how do you leverage the tools the most productive way possible, so that when things change, the organization knows very quickly what changed, where to go find that change, where to check in before they go and do the next thing. It requires a very intentional and strategic design that allows it to be fluid and productive. So those are the three pillars of how I see leading change really evolving, and some of the tools that we have available to us today.
Okay. What trends in HR, technology, culture, leadership get you most excited, or most, well, not or, what gets you most excited and most concerned about the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, great question. So the things that are most exciting to me are the opportunities for HR to show up with different skills, different tools, and a different vernacular than ever before. There are pockets of this in communities that I'm a part of. And there are, leading HR organizations that are still evolving in their frequency of talking about the big levers that are happening in HR. So it is my biggest hope and dream that more of our HR leaders are really talking about those big levers, things like operating model, things like showing up and helping the organization really leverage AI in an ethical and responsible and mindful way. Things like business acumen on what seems to be intangible elements of business when it comes to your people. It's making those more tangible and having those data points top of mind and
Hmm.
actively leveraged in business conversations. There is such opportunity for a transformation of the services and how each individual shows up, um, with that name badge of HR,
Hmm.
um, that the sky's the limit. And so I'm really passionate about just how do HR services evolve. Regarding the programs and processes of HR, there's a ton of things happening, and there's a lot of debate about things happening. So I know many positions right now, when they're posted out on LinkedIn or Indeed, they get 3, 4, 500 applicants in a day.
Oof.
And so that's something to say, like, well, how long would it take for a human to read through all of them and give them a fair shot? Like, yes, we should do that. And gee, what if AI could help us do that? And do we have a model that is accurate and
Hmm.
not biased,
Hmm.
right? And gives us a fair shot that we can trust and is reliable and saves us time? Because I don't know, by the time I got to my 100th resume, I'd be, tired, and I'd need to have it done in 3 days or a day or whatever. So there's a real human need there, and AI will come in and transform those things. And it is being done today. There's Workday has had a tool about attrition risk, or potential behaviors of somebody using the system to say this person is showing trends of possibly leaving. AI's been out there doing all the analytics and everything for a while. You're just going to see more of it being leveraged and used in the things that seem to be difficult or just not fully adopted. Another example of I've heard of companies doing this is leveraging AI for those manager performance reviews and for employees to capture their contributions for the year. That's a great opportunity to use AI to do that. We're doing it, in the way that we're writing job descriptions. That's very much happening today. So I see more of HR finding unique, meaningful ways to integrate AI where you're still ethical and reliable and leading with integrity. And it's a system and a model that you 100% trust and want to continue to leverage, or you've got checks and balances in place that will allow that model to be trustworthy. So I see a lot of that happening there. You asked my biggest fear. My biggest fear is that this doesn't happen, right? That HR doesn't rise to the occasion. That that the value or the potential of the truest contribution by HR is never fully realized. And so, therefore, more than 10% of companies are fulfilling that HR leader role with a non HR person because they think they can. There was an article, earlier this year where they were saying, well, HR and IT, they're kind of growing in the same direction. Maybe we should merge the functions. And there was
Ooh.
a hubbub about that, right?
Hmm.
And I think every function exists because they add unique value. We've been, there's nothing wrong with the way we've set up finance versus marketing versus IT versus sales. I think it still stands in business today. But to assume that you can take any skill set and plug that into HR and do what's required to be done across the business, I just think that's a little short-sighted. I really think there are very much unique skill sets that HR professionals bring, and that skill set is continuing to grow and expand. And so it's up to us, and just like any other function, right, to continue to upskill and reskill and evolve the way that we deliver our services in support of the business and in support of our people. It's imperative. And so if there's anybody out there who's saying, oh, we can wait to do that thing, or I don't need to do that yet, or so on,
Hmm.
what I read and what I hear is you will be falling behind. Like and you might not feel it every day, but if you read enough and talk to enough people, hopefully you're feeling that pressure and putting it upon yourself and your company to really invest and evolve and transform, so that you don't get left behind. And the other element is kind of what we talked about is I hope that we don't think of AI as that quick win for profits and performance and leaving people on the wayside and thinking that they're expendable. That's my biggest fear. And so my hope is that we are using it in a way that is engaging our workforce, valuing our workforce, making our workforce more human, making our customer service experiences more human, delighting our own customers more, and also bringing that in-house and delighting our employees more. AI has the ability to do that, and like I said, to close a gap on what productivity from a GDP and an economic standpoint.
Hmm.
That's where weight loss drug equivalent's going to help out, right? Like you're about to go to Thanksgiving feast on a daily basis. You need the GLP-1 drug, you know, different from you need it to, to cut where you are right now. And you're not expecting to add on more. There's
Mm-hmm.
more to come.
Mm-hmm.
There's more to come. And so hold on to your workforce, find the value of your workforce and find ways to maximize your workforce to grow the business. They are an asset. So how do you position them? And what is your responsibility as an employer to set up the conditions to position them to give their best to help your company grow? And that don't think of them only as expendable and quick wins to your profit margins. My hope is that there's a lot of value and more investment in that way.
Kristie, if you could whisper into the ear of the CEO or if you this the C-suite leader about the future of work, just three things that they should, hey, you really need to pay attention right here. What would those three things be?
Mm. The three things would be, number one, you are already curious, taking action toward AI, whatever that looks like for you. Go slow to go fast.
Go slow to go fast.
I've heard others say, like, it's the FOMO. Everybody else is doing, I got to do it. We got to do something. I want to see next month. I want to see a report on what we're doing in AI.
Mm-hmm.
That might be the temptation, and you might need to do it. But recognize putting the governance in place, creating a baseline, being mindful of where you're going to invest and why, and what are you expecting to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Go slow to go fast. That will serve you in the end. So that would be the first thing I would whisper.
Okay.
The second thing I would whisper is lean into your HR team. Ask things of them they might not be delivering today.
Mm-hmm.
Partner with them, and identify the areas of your business where the value of humans and the contributions of humans in your work and your company are at a point where you can really improve or invest or get to know better, to understand the metrics behind it, or to design new programs that create better incentives. Partner with your HR leader and invest in that area. That is where the future of work is. It's more human. And chances are maybe you haven't fully tapped into your workforce in a way that you've created the best contribution from them, because it's not a muscle that everybody uses these days. So I would encourage them to really kind of lean into that. And the third one is in that same vein, but it's a little different, is be curious about your employees' needs.
Ooh.
I've heard little anecdotes of, well, I did and I'm talking frontline workers, I'm talking blue collar workers, I'm talking white collared workers, I'm talking anybody, whatever company you're in. I think that the narrative is maybe a little similar, which is, well, so we did a survey, I did the thing, and now we're measuring results and we're still not seeing the value. They're not doing the thing. They didn't, follow through with this thing. They didn't do that thing. They're complaining about this and so on. And I just let's just make it go away, or just do it already or something. Like, I have a 7-year-old kid. I understand what it's like to lose patience and just, gosh, we're only human. I can only do so many things, like go brush your teeth now, for the seventh time. I get the spirit of that. But just like parenting, right? There's also a way to go about phrasing that engagement, of asking the request, of creating conditions to incentivize the behavior change, to give them the tools, skills, knowledge, abilities to do the thing that maybe they've never done before. And so it's worthwhile. And like I said earlier, it doesn't have to cost a lot to listen to your employees and help them feel heard. Give them an opportunity to voice their ideas and opinions, and empower them to make change, to lead change in a practical, manageable way. Guardrails and freedom and a framework, those kinds of things. Because I truly believe the success of every company is hidden inside the company, the four walls of the company. It's right there. It's in your workers. It's in the people you work with. It's with those customer calls, etc. But the hardest part is tapping into that and understanding what's the signal versus the noise. How often do you do that? How do you discern the meaningful insights, the complaint versus the nugget of value, and not creating an entitled community of employees. So there's an art and a science to that, but I would say, like, don't be afraid of that. Um, as a CEO, be curious enough and give space to listen, because the answers are probably right there inside your company. You just need to create the conditions to hear it.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I think I got one more question here.
Yeah.
What's the one question that you ask every client? A question so simple, so revealing that it helps you decide where to begin, or you can stop and say, okay, no, I know exactly what they just did.
Mm,
No. What is that
mm,
one question, if
mm.
you could share?
I think a good consultant rule book question that I've learned along the 4 years of owning my own business has been, just what are you trying to achieve? And I'll take that. There's a quick story behind that, which is so funny to me. So I inherited a people analytics team, and part of my roles in my previous employer. And the reports are the reports. Like, we've always done the reports that way. What's your headcount report? What's your diversity report? What's your spans and layers report?
Mhm.
Like your typical HR reports. We just had it was standard. Everybody used them on a regular basis and so on. And so when we were moving into a new platform, an external consultant came to me and said, "So what are your business questions?" And I said, "I'm sorry. What?" He's like, "Well, the business questions, you know." And it never occurred to me to really seek to understand the business questions that were behind the headcount report, that were behind the spans and layers report, right? Like, I could get there eventually, but it really kind of caught me off guard. And I said, gosh, that is the number one thing that is critical. That's everything. And so as I work with clients, I've gone to that. The first question is, they could say, I have a problem in my career path model. I have a problem in my employees using the app that I use in order to create quality measures of the service we deliver. I have a problem with turnover or attrition or so on. Like, that is the surface problem. But there's usually something behind that. So whether they know it or they need an external person to come in and help them find it, there's always, multiple layers behind what is really at the root cause. And that root cause is typically a belief, or it's a system. Like, it wasn't introduced as an option, or the system prevents me from doing it. There's always something deeper for there. And there's a reason for why they do it that way. It saves them time, money. Nobody questions, like, all the things. So my go-to question is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And being able to work with them to identify that, measure it, get a baseline for it, understand
Mhm.
the cost or the risk to them, and having the current state, and then moving from there into, so what would it look like to envision a better future? You want 20% growth, you want a better process, you want a better experience, and what is the value of that too? So every engagement usually starts with that, and I think every um, you know business leader would often kind of go there, but the ability to get to that answer gets more difficult depending on the complexity of
Mhm.
the problem, or the business situation, or the size of the organization. And so it just requires a little more time and effort to get there. But that's my go-to question.
Kristie, thank you so much. This has been more than powerful. This has been awesome. Thank you. You've brought a clarity, you've brought vision, um, and I love how you you talked organizational transformation. If people are really listening, that's really what you were talking about. And too few leaders dare to pursue that. I appreciate your technical grounding. Your love of HR comes across. I'm going to tell you, it comes across quite well. And the ability to use AI, use the technology. Um, I mean, you said some really wonderful things. And probably the thing that I starred many times, 95% of AI projects fail. Holy smokes. Um, that you need to, before you start using it, make sure you understand what you're trying to get out of it, real use case. So you just don't jump into something without knowing what the heck it is you're trying to get out of it. So thank you
Exactly.
very much for all of that. So before we wrap, where do you want listeners to go if they want to learn more about Everspark and I know Everspark is closing up shop, but if they need to reach out to you, if they can reach out to you, where do they go? How do they explore what you've been teaching them? Or they may have a question. How would they
Yeah.
reach out to you?
Well, I'm fortunate to have this opportunity with Paychecks that is still in line with the things that we've talked about here today, John, and the
Hmm.
things that I love and will continue to be a part of, just on a different platform. And so they can find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect. They can follow on LinkedIn, or we can, direct message. Any one of those, I very much welcome. My feed in the last 4 years has been, resharing other thought leaders or sharing my own content in the spirit of this transformation and the innovation of HR. I've posted articles based on my own research and experience that hopefully is of value to anybody out there looking for help in analytics or getting started in AI. I have an outline of what your AI policy, the sections of it, what it might be, so you can go ahead and use that as well. So I share some information out there, but you're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn, and you will continue to see more from me in the spirit of this topic today, just under a different brand name. But it is, part of my story, part of the journey that I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to experience up until this point, and where I hope to be in the next 10 years to hopefully influence and or inspire others to overcome the challenges that we said here, to maybe reverse some of the risks of the trends that we might be seeing right now, and hopefully hold hands across the board in ways that we will come out of this stronger, just like Y2K or the e-commerce, all the social media boom. We've been here before.
Hmm.
And so I'm confident we'll be able to get through it. But I would love to engage with anybody who's interested in continuing the conversation. You can find me on LinkedIn.
Kristie, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And that's it out here.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me today, John. It's been a real pleasure connecting with you today. I'm really excited about the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristie.